Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we welcome you once again to In Conversation with myself, Inayat Wadi, on this Wednesday evening. And as we welcome our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms, Salam Media, wonderful that you're able to join us once again. And interesting developments in South Africa, I must add, because this is unprecedented. This is actually the first under a democratic South Africa 31 years later. Now, the entire country looks forward to the annual budget presented by the finance minister. And the budget presentation was abruptly cancelled. And this is a result of a dispute amongst the parties in the coalition government. Now, this was always going to be quite interesting to see how the GNU would function, and particularly when it comes to major developments like the budget and the presentation of the budget. And this normally takes place in the month of February, and we've now learned that this will take place in the month of March. But the reason for the cancellation, and this is what we're going to try and unpack this evening with my guests, and just to try and understand what is actually playing out, and is this justified? Because one of the reasons it has been given is the increase in VAT from 15% to 17%. But is this all, or is it about many other issues that are playing out as far as the economy is concerned? So as these gloves have come up with regard to this budget brawl, and we've seen this clash, we are going to be joined now by Ebrahim-Khalil Hassen, who is a senior researcher at the Inclusive Economies Program, Gauteng City Region Observatory, GCRO, and the CEO at OTA, Wayne Duvenage. So without much ado, let's welcome our guests this evening, Ebrahim-Khalil Hassen, right on top of the screen. Ebrahim, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah Inayat for having me.
And Wayne, as always, an absolute pleasure having you as well. Good evening to you and welcome.
Nice to be with you guys tonight.
Yes, Ibrahim, let's just talk about the gloves coming off and the cancellation or the postponement of this budget. Did this come as a surprise?
So historically, I mean, as you've said, I mean, there's always been a majority government in South Africa. The ANC has always been able to deliver the budget. With the rise of the GNU, there's been a series of policy conflicts that they've tried to resolve through something called the clearinghouse. So whether it's on the Bella Bill, there've been a couple of issues around government stance around the Palestinian issue, etc. Government and the ANC and the parties in the GNU have had this clearinghouse, and the clearinghouse hasn't worked very effectively, in my opinion, in terms of resolving the differences. One can argue that from the very beginning, it was almost like a coalition of opposites, and was always going to be difficult. So it's not unexpected. What is unexpected is the escalation. I mean, postponing a budget speech is a major issue, and for me that was a surprise today. Oh,
we might be on our
it looks
own.
like United's a bit.
We carry on with the show.
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, were you? Okay, there we go. Be right back.
Fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Imagine a world where every child feels loved, secure, and cared for. At Beit Halima Saadia Orphanage, we are not just providing a roof over their heads, we're giving orphan children a chance for a brighter future. For just 1,500 rands a month or 18,000 rands a year, you can sponsor an orphan and transform their life. Your contribution covers essentials like food, clothing, tuition, therapy, and more, ensuring they grow in a nurturing, supportive environment. Any donation is accepted, as well as daily scheduled donations. EFT directly into our account. Beit Halima Saadia Orphanage, First National Bank, account number 1080078, branch code 250737, Section 18A registered. Take this step today. Contact Sister Nazarene at 083-653-5669 or email info@bhscycc.co.za.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Well, I must apologize for that. For some reason or the other, we actually lost connection. But Wayne, to you and Ebrahim, my apologies as well, and also to our viewers and listeners this evening. But Wayne, just following up from what Ebrahim is saying, and obviously the government of national unity was going to be put through a huge test, and particularly with regard to differing policies, ideologies as well, and particularly with regard to the economy. And we know at this point in time what the state of the economy is, and also just looking at the various ideologies in terms of how to approach this economy, the budget speech would have been absolutely crucial in terms of putting this government of national unity to the test.
Yes, absolutely. And as we know, this is a sign of a maturing democracy, by the way, because for the first time we have a shared government, and this is the first budget in the shared government. And I think rather than forge ahead, it does indicate that there is an ability to listen, to stop the bus, to halt the process, and to go back to the drawing table. So it's a good sign in one sense, but it's not good for the economy. It's not good for investor sentiment and so forth. So let's see how this plays out. We never expected the government of national unity to be a smooth sailing, and the fact that they've done this says that they are being tolerant and listening and having to listen, and it's going to have these bumps in the road along the way. And this is our new reality. We're gonna see these struggles because, as you say, the ideologies are different. You've got a DA with a liberal mindset trying to get a growth pro-business economy going. You've got social pools on the other side. And you're going to have to balance this delicately now. In the past, they didn't have to do that. It's very interesting times.
Well, certainly. And also, I think, Ebrahim, the fact that this budget postponement or cancellation came at the 11th hour, and this raises many a question in terms of, we know it is the finance minister's prerogative to present the budget, but one would have thought that a lot of discussion may have taken place in the build-up to the budget. And this, I think, has caught many by surprise that it was at the 11th hour that we've seen this cancellation or postponement.
No, Wayne makes a good point that at least, the parties are speaking together. One has to, of course, ask the question which you are asking, Nayat, is why didn't this happen before? And from the information that's coming through, it seems that the president did convene at least 2 meetings before this. Maybe they assumed that there was some sort of consensus, but that over the weekend, what we saw was increasing sort of communication, particularly from the Democratic Alliance, that it would not support any tax increases. So it wasn't specifically around VAT. It was just more broadly that they wouldn't support tax increases, which is a critical part of your fiscal policy. And I think the criticism you make or implied in your question, United, is correct. They should have been able to sort this out. It's not good for the country, and it's not good for the economy that we have. We've ended essentially almost like a stalemate in a sense.
Yes, certainly. And also, Wayne, you and I have spoken many times on a number of issues, particularly with regard to the tax and the tax regime. And as Ebrahim points out, this is not only limited to VAT, but the tax regime as a whole against an economy that is hemorrhaging at this point in time. And you spoke about pro-growth and pro-business. all of that actually put together in terms of both the DA ideology, but also in finding a balance in terms of what would be at this stage and where we are as an economy, what would be an ideal tax regime?
Well, I think we got a very clear message that, and Edward Kieswetter spelled it out earlier in the week, to say the ability for government to push company tax, PAYE up, that limit has been reached. If you study the Laffer curve principle, the higher you push that now, we're at the peak. You don't necessarily get any more money into the coffers of government. So they had one place to go, which was VAT. And sadly, that was the worst place they could have gone, because that's a regressive tax. That hurts everybody. The poorest of the poor suffer the most. What frustrates us is that we would have liked to have seen government starting its journey of, we're not going to lean on the public anymore in business. We're going to start leaning on ourselves. We're going to reduce the waste. Every year, the Auditor General shows this gross maladministration and wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure. We're going to tackle that. We're going to tackle illicit trade in tobacco. Those two combined is about 30 billion rand a year lost to the fiscus. So what we want to see is government dealing with its waste, dealing with its inefficiencies, cutting out the blue light brigades, questioning why are we in the DRC, why are we bailing out state entities like airlines and armaments manufacturing when this is not our space as a core. Those are not core government processes. This is where government now has to go. They cannot. It's really a disrespect to the public when they allow themselves to become bloated. 2 deputy ministers in some of these departments, massive increases, and wasteful expenditure, and they don't go and look there first. So this, I think the message is very clearly out there. The public will not accept a 2% increase as well.
Yes, Ebrahim, perhaps you just like to expand on what Wayne is talking about, particularly with regards to the disrespect that is shown to the public. And we've seen over a period of time, the easiest way to generate revenue obviously has been through taxes. But, obviously Wayne has touched on a number of these issues as well, particularly with regard to sin taxes and other forms of taxes. But again, to what extent, to what level is, are South Africans disrespected, and particularly when at a time like this, when a budget is presented, has the government actually thought through these issues in detail? We've heard over and over again, wasteful expenditure, clamping down, but again, we've got this bloated bureaucracy in this country.
Sure. So, just to pick up on one of the points that Wayne made, it was interesting that you mentioned the Laffer curve, because actually more recently in the economic literature, what is actually being referred to as the Khaldun-Laffer curve. So actually the origins of the idea of the Laffer curve, the Khaldun-Laffer curve, actually comes from Ibn Khaldun, which, listeners to this radio station would be quite interested in, a Muslim sociologist. And Wayne is right. We've reached a point, I think, across the income distribution where there's a level of dissatisfaction. So we run a survey called the Quality of Life Survey, which focuses on Gauteng. And it clearly shows that, across the income distribution, there's a high level of dissatisfaction with government, a high level of dissatisfaction with the levels of services provided. So that's true. So it is true. People are feeling, in your words, disrespected or outside of the political system. And one indication of that is the low levels of participation in our elections. However, I think that we need to separate that from whether government is actually just doing something willy-nilly, because I think that there's quite a clear strategy. Whether it's the right strategy or not, we can debate. But President Ramaphosa has an interesting puzzle, because he started a few experiments during COVID, which have surprisingly proved to be effective in terms of reaching poverty, in terms of helping young people transition into work. And one of it is the social relief of distress grant, which now we have a vast academic literature which shows that it does support job search. So that's been relatively successful. The question is, can you expand it in terms of basic income? The second one is the community works type programs, which again are also showing that if we provide people with opportunities and some training, they're able to at least get on their feet. The problem is that the economy is not growing. So to fund an expansion of these things requires something. So it's not just as much, and I totally agree with Wayne. We cannot be bloated, we cannot be wasteful, etc. There's a developmental and a redistributive challenge that I think is there. And we can assume that one of the things that maybe tried to have been happening within this budget is that by increasing VAT or raising the taxes, they'll be able to fund some of these additional programs. I would agree with Wayne that VAT's not the right way to go because it's a regressive tax. But it's a much more complicated issue than just looking at questions of bloat and waste. I do think the government has applied its mind to a range of issues. They're in a really difficult position where, in a sense, they know what would work to get the unemployment rate lower, or at least to provide a reduction in poverty, but there isn't the funds available to actually do that. And that requires some creative thinking on our part as a country in terms of how we resolve that conundrum.
When just in your view, is it just a question of unavailability of funds? Does the government have a strategy, and more importantly, a strategy that is workable?
Well, they're in a tight spot. I mean, this was another budget where they were delaying the issue of the growing debt burden. We're never going to get on top of it if every year we say, look, this is something we are aware of and we're going to get to it. And then year after year we don't. And 10 years later, we've gone from 10% of our funds now to 15% over the last 8 years or so. It goes just to settling debt, R1 billion a day. We're not going to get out of this pickle if we don't get serious about driving a growth in the economy focused budget. But we keep coming back to this view that our view is that if you put 10 billion rand into the criminal justice system, just a fictitious number, we believe you get 3 times that back. And that is if you tackle the corrupt syndicates, if you put in systems that you can get people into and out of courts quickly, so the accountability and the transparency process starts to flow. And then the SIU and the NPA and the Assets Forfeiture Unit can start clawing back and we can start losing less. Another view we have is that the skills development levy, 1% of payroll, it's billions of rands that goes into a cesspool of corruption and wasteful expenditure. Every one of those 21 entities has bloated boards that attend too many meetings at high prices. Sanral, a gross overreach in its board, where its chairperson earns, for instance, 3 million rand a year, and they go from 8 meetings a year to 26. This type of abuse is taking place, and it's not difficult to get on top of this stuff. It's actually quite quick and easy. And yet we don't see government applying its mind to say, we must stop leaning on the people and we must start tightening our belts. That money, that saving, that ability to adopt a new mindset that is focused on what's best for the people, it just doesn't come through. And it's not even discussed. I mean, I was quite surprised today when Enoch Godongwana spoke about, what's the zero-based budgeting? I've read about it, but I don't know how it works. Well, his predecessor, Tito Mboweni, was talking about it, and we need it. We need it in local government especially, because if we start wiping the slate clean and looking at every contract we have, and ghost workers and wasteful expenditure and systems that don't work, you start to save a lot of money. We don't even have that mindset. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we're never going to get there with a government that is just not thinking like that.
Ebrahim, Wayne says government not thinking like this. Let's just try and see or try and understand the mindset of the government at this point in time in terms of where we are and where they would like to see this country go. And I spoke about is there strategic direction? Is there political will to apply? We've seen so much take place over the years, summit after summit, whether we're talking about job summits, we're talking about investment summits, all of this has been taking place. So, we're not short of talk, but what we're short of is walking the talk.
Sure. In general, I would agree with Wayne. There's a lot that we can do and we're not doing enough. The CETAs is an interesting example. I'll give you one example of solar technicians in Gauteng, which has been a partnership between the CETA, the provincial government, etc. We've trained 3,000 young people in Gauteng to be solar technicians. So it's not like nothing's working. It's not like nothing's working. The CETAs is in itself. I would agree there's some that are really horror stories. There are others, particularly like if you look in tourism. We've got good examples. So it's, for me, it's like, I think and part of the challenge also in more broadly in our society is that yes, we must raise the criticism that obviously, that's part of what we do as a society, but also we need to be looking at the examples which we can scale. Is there the political will within government? Look, let's be frank. There's good politicians, there's bad politicians, there's good bureaucrats, there's bad bureaucrats, and there's a tussle within government between the good and the bad. I would even go so far as to say there's a tussle between the corrupt and the not corrupt within government. And our role is really to actually, after the devastating impact of state capture, is actually to rebuild and reclaim the state. And that's why it's important what organizations like Wayne are doing. To hold government accountable, etc. But I think we need to be taking one step further, which is to say, look, within all the things that are going on, these are things which we think are working, and can we scale them together with government? Some of the engagements, for instance, around the relationships between government and business, for instance, in terms of transforming ESCOM, pivotal and important. So I think it's part of the narrative is that we are despondent. We've come from a very, and I was there as well. We've come from a very dark place. It's about us beginning to change the narrative and to say, look, we're going to fight this thing squarely. We're going to work with good people within government, etc. And I think that if you're looking for a clean slate where everybody's on the same page, no, we have a government that was taken over, and we have to fight for each inch in that government to regain it back to the idea of a developmental state.
Yes, Ebrahim and Wayne, I'm going to put both of you on hold. We're going to go for a quick air break. We'll be back.
Valley's Motor Spares. We supply motor spares and accessories for all makes and models of motor cars, LDVs, bakkies, trucks, and earth-moving equipment. We deliver on time, every time. Please contact us via WhatsApp on 014-592-0925 or call 014-592-0925 or visit 28 Zenderling Street, Rustenburg. Remember the name, Valley's Motor Spares.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Albeit Lodge. Your true home away from home. Albeit is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Albeit has to offer. For reservations, call 041-583-6415. or visit www.albeitlodge.co.za.
As heavy snow and bitter winds descend on Gaza, Afghanistan, and Lebanon, hundreds of displaced and refugee families struggle to survive the winter. Without adequate shelter or clothing, the harsh weather threatens lives. Donate towards AMA's Winter Rescue Campaign to provide the food, fuel, and shelter needed by families in Gaza, Lebanon, and Afghanistan to survive the elements and provide warmth to those in need.
Yasin Badat Financial Advisory. Are your financial goals feeling out of reach? Yasin Badat Financial Advisory is here to turn your aspirations into achievements. Our dedicated team armed with a history of success, is ready to guide you through the complex nature of financial and investment planning. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to the game, our personalized solutions cater to your unique goals and risk appetite. Trust in our commitment to transparency, integrity, and excellence. Ready to unlock a world of financial freedom? Partner with us today. Call Yasin Badat Financial Advisory at +27333462071 or visit www.yasinbadat.com. Yasin Badat Financial Advisory, guiding you to financial success.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Well, we continue with this evening's broadcast in conversation with myself, United Wadi, with my guests, Ebrahim-Khalil, Hassen, and Wayne Duvenage. Wayne, we've already seen the reactions as far as the markets are concerned to this postponement of the budget. And we know that the Rand obviously has taken somewhat of a hit, and that includes bonds as well. So this is not only about South Africa and, domestic policies and economic policies. The world is actually watching, and as it is at this point in time, we know South Africa is under severe pressure. We know the whole land debate is taking place right now. We've seen Donald Trump and signing executive order after executive order as well. And in the past also, and we've seen AGOA come under threat as well. So this is not only about South Africa, because again, if we are talking about a budget that is going to attract foreign investment in this country, does this actually augur well for the country? Because clearly with the radar on South Africa at this point in time, my view obviously is this doesn't augur well in how South Africa is actually seen internationally.
No, it doesn't. And it's sad that we're in this very, very tight position. We shouldn't be here, let's face it. And I always say that with our wealth of minerals, with our wealth of flora and fauna, our diversity, the beauty of this country, we should have 3 times the tourism that Australia has, for instance. Now, Australia takes days to get there. And they've got a rock and a barrier reef and a kangaroo. I mean, think of what we've got here. We're on an overnight trip from Europe, and yet we struggle to achieve their numbers in tourism. So that's just one area. Mining, the resources that we have. You speak to the mining industry. They don't want to come and mine here because of the political interference, the corruption, the lack of the cadastral systems, the lack of transparency. Those are just 2 industries alone that would be able to start unlocking wealth and growth and jobs. So it's just so sad to see our potential just wrapped up and never able to be achieved because we have a closed mindset around what we need to do to just make it easy to do business, to visit, and to come and invest in this country. And it's not difficult. It's just the mindset's wrong. We make it difficult. If we could just get a government to sit back and ask themselves, how do we create a progressive, growth-oriented economy that gets the world flocking to South Africa to invest? If we could give them that assurance, if we could stop the political meddling, and if we could just focus on those few things, we can hit the 3, 4, 5% growth per annum. We can be the darling of the world, which is what we once were when we entered into our new democracy. So that's the frustration we have. It's so frustrating when you see potential and there's nobody willing to unlock it. The mind boggles, quite frankly, how it's frustrating.
Ebrahim, just the question that I raised with Wayne, and just your thoughts as well. Considering where we are and how South Africa is being viewed by the international community, and looking at South Africa, is South Africa seen still as an attractive investment destination against what is playing out globally, and also the global political dynamics that are playing out, particularly in the United States of America?
So I think in terms of attracting investment, I mean, there's this relationship that we often have between the relationship between sort of good governance and investment, right? And I think it's an important narrative. However, there's also a counter narrative if you look towards the east. So there's a very interesting book that I've been reading by a guy called Yu, who does a analysis of the relationship between inequality and corruption, and argues that one of the reasons why countries like Taiwan and South Korea are less corrupt than, for instance, the Philippines, is because they actually had a redistributive process. So it involved more people in the economy. And it's a very uncomfortable debate within South Africa because we tend to present the argument as in, let's just get good governance right, and then the investment will flow. The reality is that in order to deal with corruption, etc., within our country, you need to also begin to figure out how you deal with redistribution. So obviously, I mean, given the context which we in, to get to your point, internationally, etc., the possibilities of a large-scale once-off land redistribution are very limited and would probably be damaging on the economy, as much as some of us would, for ethical and moral reasons, want to advocate for that. So we need to be sensitive to that. But in trying to attract investment, etc., we need to make sure that what we're doing is that we're including people in that, and it's a deep challenge. It's a deep challenge around how we deal with questions of distribution, questions of inequality, etc., within this country in a responsible manner. So it's both of those things. And obviously, I mean, we applaud that the president hasn't kowtowed to the US on all of these issues, etc. There's a broader sort of issue, is that if we move, as people are suggesting, that we move more east towards China, etc., we need to be quite clear about what those things are. I mean, the world is not made up of angels, so to speak. Whether it's the US or China. But we certainly need to be able to do this here. But whatever we do, I think there's a fallacy in thinking that we get to 3 to 5% and the unemployment rate is going to go down, because the reality of our economy is that it doesn't absorb, and it doesn't absorb very particular people. It doesn't absorb women, it doesn't absorb young people, it doesn't absorb black people. So it's a very, very and I'm not criticizing Wayne, because I think we have to get the fundamentals right in terms of making sure that there's no corruption in the ports, etc. But if we want to be a winning nation that actually brings down unemployment, in that, it's going to be beginning to actually deal with these distributional questions in a way that's responsible and allows us to actually get in additional funding from whether it's from the US, Europe, wherever, into the economy, but also beginning to provide those opportunities to people within South Africa. Yeah.
Well, Ebrahim, sorry, Wayne, you were going to add?
No, I agree with Ebrahim. We have to have an inclusive mindset and deal with it properly and responsibly, which again needs to come into the fray and the mix of getting our economy going again. I mean, the sad thing is that we've just got too many youngsters coming into the job market that are unemployable. We got to deal with this, the whole skills development programs. So it's a multifaceted approach, and I agree with Ebrahim.
Well, just while we are talking about this multifaceted approach, and what is also important to understand is not only South Africa, but Africa in general has been under the spotlight. There has been a huge scramble for Africa, and we've seen it for a very, very long time. And we're also starting to see what is emerging as a divide between the global north and the global south in the scramble for Africa, and who's got the most influence. And looking at South Africa, where we are at this point in time, we know we've been part of BRICS for a number of years as well. And I'm not too sure to what extent we have benefited from being part of BRICS. And just looking at South Africa as a country, as a nation, and where do we fit in this bigger global picture? And I think this is very, very important to understand, because on the one hand, we know that the United States of America is the largest economy in the entire world, and we see Donald Trump again threatening even BRICS nations, saying that BRICS countries will come crawling to the United States of America. Now, these are statements that have actually been made. Now, where does this leave a country like South Africa, where we've got to basically deal with our own domestic issues, with an economy that is struggling, the state of joblessness, all these challenges that we are faced with? Where does this actually leave us? And again, coming back, do we have a strategy to actually deal even with some of these challenges?
Yeah, I don't think we have a very clear and broad enough strategy. Of course, we must deal with the entire world. We must be able to choose our trading partners, and we mustn't be bullied and threatened in the way we do. But we've also got to be very careful that we don't cut off our nose to spite our face. So when we need the states more than they need us, we've got to be more humble. We need to see statesmanship. We need to not see rhetoric across the airwaves. But I would have expected Cyril Ramaphosa to get into a plane and go to America and sit down with Donald Trump in a very diplomatic way and feed him the truth, feed him the facts, not allowing AfriForum and others to feed them the information. Go and explain to him what our land issues are, what our redistribution programs are, why we are a good country to support, what we're about. That face-to-face conversation in a mature manner can just dampen the heat, take the heat out of the situation, and have agreements staying in place. But if we want to shout at each other across the oceans, then the way we're doing it does us no favors. So I think we need statesmanship, and I think we need clearer policies to attract investment here. And the Chinese are a growing economy. We're doing more and more business with them, but we must be very careful not to allow the Chinese to come and not invest here. So what you'll find is that their vehicles are becoming the biggest supplier of vehicles, well priced, good for the economy, to our country. But if you don't want to invest in manufacturing plants or assembly plants here, then what are you going to do? I mean, the current manufacturers here will close down eventually, and then we lose jobs. So it's again multi-pronged. We've just really got to get our strategic processes and thinking lined up, our ducks in a row, a lot better than what they are.
Well, thanks for that, Wayne. And also, Ebrahim, I know we are diverting somewhat from the budget postponement and the budget cancellation, but it would have actually been quite interesting to see what the finance minister was going to talk about with regard to South Africa and our position in the as far as the global community is concerned from an economic perspective. But what is also critical is as far as South Africa is concerned and where we actually fit in not only in the African continent, but how South Africa is actually viewed or seen by the international community. And you alluded earlier on with regard to South Africa and the ICJ, and will South Africa be punished economically? These were discussions that were actually taking place. And are we starting to actually see some of that emerging, with statements that Donald Trump has been making? And again, we're talking about a government of national unity here. And we've already seen some of our politicians, or Donald Trump talking about our politicians being sanctioned, not allowed to travel. All of this is going to impact on the functioning of government ultimately. And that would also obviously include the functioning of the country from an economic perspective.
Yeah, so I wish I shared Wayne's optimism that President Ramaphosa can get on a plane and even get a meeting with Donald Trump. But I doubt that would happen. Look, we tell our kids when they're in school, how do you deal with Donald Trump? I think there's method in his madness. I think he's a very intelligent politician, but he's also a bully. And how do you deal with a bully? You either stand up to him or you ignore him. And I think we've given him too much of a show. My own view. I think we should be saying, no, it's fine. You're entitled to that, and we don't meddle in your internal domestic affairs. You don't meddle in our own internal domestic affairs. I also think dealing with a particular sort of grouping, which are termed like alt-right, very ideological, very difficult to actually get agreements with him. So, I mean, I wouldn't be too. I think we've given him too much airtime. We've responded too much to this here, and I think we should just not give this thing more oxygen. And I think that would provide the space to actually have the discussion that Wayne is alluding to. In terms of our international partnerships, last week I attended the launch of the OR Tambo Special Economic Zone Phase 2. And it was very interesting because I've always been very critical of government and the way we structure our SEZs, etc. But this one actually seems to be working. So it's linked to the airport, and the first phase they focused on jewelry, and they also have a very large agro processing plant. And now they're moving into pharmaceuticals and medical devices. And what was very interesting from the business representatives that were there at the launch was their commitment, firstly, their commitment to the process, but also how they define the problem. So they define the problem is that we currently import more pharmaceuticals and medical devices than we export, but through investments, through the SEZs, etc., we'll be able to shift that around and provide much needed medicines and devices into specifically the African continent. So it's about we sometimes get overwhelmed by this bigger thing, and America's huge. I mean, you quite like to point out our biggest trading partner, etc. But there's a range of opportunities, and Africa is, in a sense, Africa rising. As the Economist has alluded to. There's areas in Africa that are growing. It has the youngest potential, etc. The largest number of young people across the world. There's lots of opportunities there, and it's so good to see something actually working. The question is that can we actually get to the scale that we need? So I mean, the OR Tambo SEZ is not going to solve the unemployment problem in South Africa, but it does give you sort of 3,000 to 5,000 stable formal jobs. It's about multiplying those sorts of initiatives across the country. So I think it's not all doom and gloom. But I'll just reiterate the point. I think we've given Donald Trump and the American government too much airtime. I think it's it's good. I mean, sometimes you just ignore the bully in the room. Yeah.
Well, I quite like what you say, Ebrahim, in terms of ignoring the bully. But Wayne, let's just talk about priorities. And now that possibly this budget may go back to the drawing board, what would you like to see in terms of priorities and what the finance minister should be thinking about?
Well, he's got a tough job now. I mean, the cat is out the bag. Everyone's seen his speech. And I certainly don't think he's going to be able to come back with the same speech or the same intent. Now, here's what I would do if I was him. Firstly, he has held back any increases in the fuel levy for 3 years. And I think that's a good thing because previous ministers just, again, not even thinking this became a routine, slap on 50 cents onto the... And it became very, very expensive, 100 billion rand a year or 90 billion rand a year just from the fuel levy before the road accident fund. The fact that he stopped that for 3 years, I think he had license now or an ability to put 50 cents onto the fuel levy again, and that would have given him about 10, 11 billion rand straight away. And that would have been easier to stomach. And as I said, there's a number of other areas. I think they could have found that 30, 40, 50 billion rand. And maybe at a worst case scenario, put a 1% onto the VAT for a 6-month period while they found all the other revenue or savings opportunities, let me put it that way, and get into this cost-cutting mode and thinking. If they adopted that approach, I think we would be very supportive. We'd understand that. We'd understand it was I know you don't very often get a temporary 1% suggestion. Government gets used to it. They get fat and lazy again, and then they just leave it there. But if they did that, and they could wind it back, and they could go and find some of the savings and get the levies and the excise duties from the illicit trade that shouldn't be taking place. Well, what a better way to get the people behind you, to get your people to start believing in your government again. So I think I think they need to have a change of. I just keep coming back to this. The change of mindset is necessary. If you ran this like a business, well, you would have been out of business long time ago. So when you run a country like a monopoly and you get lazy and you don't think of how to cut or to be efficient, but just to keep loading the burden onto the public, well, then you have what we have. We are suffering as a nation. We are overtaxed. So I just think they've got to change tack now. They've got to go back to the drawing board and think hard. And what we do know is that civil society has a lot to offer, a lot to share. As I said earlier, skills development levy, cut that by half. I promise you won't lose one. And you focus on efficiency, you will still be able to train and uplift skills of as many people as you're doing now with double their price or the amount that you get the 1% of payroll. And that's because we work with CETAs. We work with the whistleblowers. The incessant waste, the gross abuse, it's mind-blowing. We've worked out in a lot of these projects, we pay 3 times the price. For every kilometer of road we pay for, we should have got 3. For every RDP house we build, we should have got 3. Clinics, schools, the list just goes on. That type of efficiency, we don't have that mindset. And you always be on the back foot. You're always going to overpay, and you shouldn't. There's so many middlemen in the process. It's quite sickening, actually.
Yes, Wayne. Ebrahim, just as far as holding government accountable is concerned, and from what Wayne is actually saying, is enough being done? I know, from looking at from civil society, for example, are we doing enough? Could we be doing more?
So I think civil society in South Africa is like our biggest strength in terms of just holding government accountable. And I mean, more strength to organizations like Wayne's that actually, we may disagree on the margins around some issues, but I mean, doing really credible work in terms of holding government accountable. I think, and one of the things we've been doing at the GCRO is beginning to think around the problem that Wayne's identified, the overpricing of services. And so we're in a process of developing business processes, a demonstration app together, I must say, together with the Gauteng provincial government. We should actually allow and remove discretion from how much you spend. So when you buy a chair, you're not spending like 5,000 Rand on the chair, you're spending like normal human beings like 1,000 Rand for a chair, whatever the price of the chair is. So there are ways of beginning to deal with the bureaucracy. And I think that's really where we're going to get the biggest changes in terms of procurement reform. And if you're going to deal with, so the basic idea is that before the money actually leaves the system, we actually have the proper business processes and the checks in place to actually make sure that we're buying the right things, so we don't buy things which are not needed in a hospital or a school, etc. But secondly, that we're getting fair value for it. And 3, and this might sound a bit geeky, but that we get the information out there so that we're actually able to leverage things like machine learning, so that we're able to develop like early warning systems. It sounds a bit like far-fetched in it, but we actually, and the other thing which we want to do is we want to try and make it using open source software. So there's researchers, we obviously want to open source it so that it's cheap and affordable, etc. So it's about trying to reclaim the public service. I think we owe a deep level of gratitude to civil society, even the media, for the work that has been done, whether it's around state capture, etc. But I think reformers within government, I think, are going to need to be much more bold. They're going to need to be much more innovative in terms of trying things, in terms of getting the accountability right within the public service. I was very interested in Wayne's, Wayne's suggestion around 10 billion for the justice sector. I mean, that sounds like something that could work. I mean, for instance, I know that for many years, our national laboratory hasn't had a decent forensic capacity. So if you're going to deal with crime, I mean, that would be one way that you can deal with it. And I think the ministers and the president need to be listening to civil society. But there's a range of proposals that are there. If you go into the urban sector where I work, I mean, there's proposals around how you can rapidly increase the number of black businessmen that own small like flats. There's a range of proposals that are there that could actually work to grow the economy. And I think to use like Wayne's, like a pro-growth budget that actually has good distributional consequences. So I think, but getting inside that bureaucracy and beginning to open that black box is, I think, probably the thing that we're going to do. It's too much. We can't chase every rand within. We just need to be more ethical, and we need to strengthen the good public servants that are there to actually get the job done.
Yes, Wayne. Also, I think, from what Ebrahim is saying, obviously being bold, but also in terms of being aggressive, in terms of resolving a number of issues. And why I'm saying aggression is we've got a very, very, we've got world-class in the form of SARS, revenue services, in terms of revenue and revenue collection. And I mean, these are world-class system. And the moment, people hear of SARS or Edward Kieswetter, it's basically the fear of the devil that's actually put into them. So we're doing that very, very well in terms of generating and collecting revenue. But when it comes to spending the money, this is where we've got a problem. And, one would like to see the same level of aggression in terms of implementing systems, to cut down on things like wasteful expenditure. We heard the president in the State of the Nation address talking over well over 260 municipalities. Now, all of that is found lacking at this point in time. And ideally, we would like to see aggression in that particular area.
Absolutely. I'll give you an example. A number of years ago, the Joburg Roads Agency had a lovely app. You saw a water leak, a traffic light out, stop sign down, sewage leak. You just went onto your phone and clicked 2 clicks, always while you're driving, and it went through to the ERP system, and they would fix. That collapsed. And then we asked about it, and we heard they paid 20 million rand for this app. 20 million, and obviously the app developers had them in a corner. They didn't want to pay the additional money. I think some mates had the contract, and it collapsed. So we thought, let's help. Let's provide some solutions. We went and developed an app. We paid for it, millions of rand. We took one that was partially defunct, couldn't get, and we revived it. We worked with the developers, and we offered it to all municipalities free of charge. Free. 2 seconds to report an app, an incident. Nobody, besides 10 small municipalities, nobody took it up. We went to the city of Johannesburg and said, here it is, for free. It'll integrate into your ERP. They don't want it. It integrates into the city of Cape Town's system very easily. And it's this type of frustration. You say, we need to digitize. We need to become smart cities. If you don't have this, civil society is offering you a solution and you don't want it. When the mayor complained and the city power complained of vandalism of substations, we called a meeting with them. 2 of them came to office. We said, we have got a network of resident associations and community associations. We want to help you. So what we'll do is a 3-way agreement. You don't have to pay a cent. We will have the resident associations use their armed response, use their neighbors to the substations, put their cameras, put motion detection on, and have armed response within a minute of vandalism starting to take place at the substations. It's a problem you've identified. We want to help you for free. Nothing. No response. They said, yeah, no, that sounds like a good idea. We'll get back to you. It's like you have to beg to help. That's the frustration. So yeah, we need to digitize. We need to, as you say, get aggressive in this mindset of embracing civil society to come with meaningful solutions and meaningful partnerships. Why is it so hard to do this? It just, again, I get frustrated just because it doesn't make sense. I come from a business world where efficiency is so important, productivity. And now we have 50% of our traffic lights in Gauteng and Joburg not working. But we won't put in a triple-hour pointsman just to deal with it in a temporary, because you don't want to just have pointsmen all the time. We know what the problems are. We've worked with business to help and find the solutions. Do you think the city wants to implement solutions? Not on your life. So these 2026 elections can't come soon enough. But I don't know if Joburg can last that long, because we are having more and more stranded assets in the city. Warehouses are emptying. Shopping centers are emptying, property prices are coming down, and this world-class African city is becoming, it's in decay, and it's in rapid decay. If we don't stop this, I'm afraid this is going to have a knock-on effect to the entire country. And Treasury needs to get involved here. The Minister of Finance needs to take this issue, their economic hub, seriously, this collapse. Everybody seems to be thinking that it's going to survive.
Sure.
Let's say.
Yes, Ebrahim, we've got a few minutes. I know you're going to add something, but we just need to wrap up. Just some final thoughts. And as we look ahead at now a new date for the budget to be presented.
So I think, the minister's obviously going to have to sit down, reconfigure what's in the budget, and hopefully there's a settlement within the GNU. If there's no settlement, that's really then, it really opens up a very unprecedented area in which we're in. I would hope that the minister would begin to do the stuff that Wayne's mentioning, which is around reprioritization within the budget, looking for alternative sources of funding, including the fuel levy, but also maybe a tax on a small tax on financial transactions, which could raise a significant amount of money. I agree. things like our CETAs, etc., we can probably look at ways of spending it more efficiently. But I think that there's a more creative mix available than simply increasing VAT by 2%, and not just creative, but one that's actually workable and easily implementable.
Well, thank you for that, Ebrahim. Wayne, I'll let you have the last word.
No, I agree with you, Ebrahim. It's going to be very interesting. Looking forward to it, and we're looking forward to government adopting an approach that says we need to work hand in hand with civil society and others, business. We must unlock the potential of this country. I'm excited about this country's future. We just got to shake the tree a little bit harder, and I'm confident about the GNU. I really am. I think it would have fallen apart by now if they weren't working hard to keep it on track. And today's situation was one of the necessary evils of a maturing democracy, and we are handling this transition to shared government. As much as there is always going to be politicking and one-upmanship, you're never going to get rid of that. They are still, being level-headed to a large extent about it, and we're going to get there. But it'd be interesting to see what happens on the 12th of March. Thank you for your time.
Well, we wait with bated breath. Wayne Duvenage and Ebrahim-Khalil Hassen, we thank both of you for your time with us this evening right here on Solar Media. All the best.
Thank you, Salam.
Walaikum salam. Ebrahim-Khalil Hassen, Wayne Duvenage with us this evening. And with that, we're going to go for a quick break. We come back, we still have got a lot more to unpack, and we are going to be staying with a local issue, and particularly looking at this whole claim of genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Afrikaners in South Africa. So stay with us.